Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Houston Sports Talk back another video day, and today the Houston Texans lose to the Chicago Bears 21-17 in the first preseason game, but it was the Hall of Fame game. The Houston Texans and the Chicago Bears did not get to play the final 3.5 minutes of the third quarter in the entire fourth quarter due to bad weather in Canton, Ohio. Wish everybody at the game and in the city of Canton, Ohio are staying safe, because that rain there, watching, after the game had gotten postponed or whatever they wanted to, they had postponed it. Then they officially, ended the game, declared the Bears winners. They were showing the rain that was going on in Canton, Ohio, as Joe Buck and Troy Aikman were still talking in the booth, and that rain was bad. And they could show that they were showing the radar as well. Some bad rain coming there, or already there, but more to come. Lightning as well. There was no way for these two teams to go out and finish this game. And I don't like the people that say this game doesn't matter, because this game does matter. This is preseason. It probably doesn't matter to the. It does. Preseason doesn't matter. Preseason doesn't matter to the fans. It probably doesn't matter to the people that are calling the game. Maybe it does. I don't know, but. And it doesn't matter to the players on the field that know they have a roster spot. But for the players that are still fighting for a roster spot, and the players that barely had gotten reps in that game, were just starting to get reps in the third quarter, or players that were going to get reps in the fourth quarter but didn't get those reps, that's where the game matters. Now, fortunately, this is an extra preseason game. All of the other 28 teams in the NFL play 3 preseason games. This was an extra game for the Houston Texans and the Chicago Bears. And I'm not just talking about the Texans. I'm talking about both teams, because both teams have guys that are not going to make the roster. 37 guys get cut. There are guys that are fighting for roster spots. 37 guys are going to be jobless in a couple weeks. They're fighting. And a lot of those guys are getting their reps and their snaps right as the game ends, and that's where we didn't see football played in this game. Now, I'm not saying that they should have went and played in the rain, which was a terrible idea, but that it does matter to those guys. So that's the preseason matters just to those guys that are fighting for the roster spot. And so it's unfortunate for them, but the good thing is that both teams still have 3 preseason games left, like every other NFL team does. But that was a little bit of a chance for both guys, guys on both teams to make some noise. But it is what it is. Weather happens. It cancels important things throughout your whole life. But final score is 21-17. Texans lose this game. I gotta say, this one felt weird, because in the past I've had this weird thing when the Texans, in the regular season were losing. Preseason was like always fun for me as a fan of the Texans, because I was like, okay, this is where we win. Because when the Texans were losing these last couple years. Like, I'm talking about like the last couple years where Davis Mills was the quarterback. Even last season when C.J. Stroud was in his rookie season, we all thought it was going to be a better year, but we didn't think it was going to be the year that it was. So preseason's like, okay, this is our chance to go out there and get some wins. We're not going to see too many of these in the regular season. So the preseason's like, oh yeah, let's get some wins. But like this year, you see them take an L, and I'm like, all right, it's not a big, it's. The last couple years I've been like, oh, let's win in the preseason. I love preseason wins because we're not going to win too many in the regular season, but this year I'm like, okay, this team's going to be good. I just got that feeling about this team, and I like the way they came out right from the start and looked really good. And we're talking about most guys out, in the start of this game on the second team. I mean, obviously Davis Mills, backup quarterback, started. Third tight end, Tegan Quintoriano was the starting tight end for the Texans. They had the 2 wide receivers that started off. It was John Mechie. He's a part of the second team. Xavier Hutchinson as well, who's a part of the third team. We didn't see Noah Brown. We didn't see Robert Woods. Of course, we didn't see Tank Dell, Nico Collins, and Stephon Diggs as expected, but we didn't see Robert Woods and Noah Brown. We didn't see Dameon Pierce, but I think that both teams did this as well. I mean, like the Bears, look at some of their backup guys. The Bears did not play Gerald Everett, who is their backup tight end. They had other backups that did not play in this game. Obviously, we knew that both teams weren't playing their starters, but both teams also had backups that didn't play, and I think a big reason why of that is the fact that we are going to see these two teams match up pretty soon in week 2 of the regular season. So you don't want to give, you don't want to give anybody, you don't want to give the opponent the, any like advantages when facing them in week 2. And so I think that's a reason why you did see some second team guys on both rosters not play in this game as well. A lot of second team guys did not play as well. So yeah, let's get into this game though. 21-17's final score. Scoring summary: Texans scored the first 10 points of this ballgame. Davis Mills looked really good in the first drive. Was in sync. He didn't throw 74 yards in the first drive, but they went as an offense 74 yards in the first drive, and they scored a touchdown. Davis Mills 9-yard touchdown pass to Tegan Quintoriano, third-year tight end, 7-0. Then in the second quarter, with 12 minutes left, Kaimi Fairbairn knocks in a 33-yard field goal. It's 10-0. Then, look, you always hate to see your team get scored on, but I'm a Texas Longhorns fan. I don't know how many Longhorns fans that are Texans fans as well are watching, but go Longhorns. And Colin Johnson, alongside Roschon Johnson, both Johnsons, are a couple, Johnsons, or a couple of Chicago Bears that are on this Chicago, or a couple Chicago Bears players on their roster that went to UT. And Colin Johnson's kind of been on a couple teams now. I think this is his third team. I know he's been with the Jags, and I know he's been with the Giants. I don't know if he's been with anybody else since then, but I loved watching Colin Johnson with UT. He was like our best wide receiver when Sam Ehlinger was quarterback, and so I was wishing him the best. So even when he's having a good game like he did in this game, I still want to root for him because I'm so used to rooting for him when he's with the Longhorns, and it's even funnier like he's still in that orange color with Chicago, just like he was with the Longhorns. So it's like nothing has changed. Because he's still in orange, but try not to clap when he scores. But he scored twice today. 20-yard reception that was thrown by Brett Rippon, 10-7. But then the Texans, right before the halftime, scored a touchdown. Case Keenum throws a 4-yard touchdown pass to Cam Akers. Great touchdown reception by Cam Akers, and it's 17-7. But then Brett Rippon leads a super quick drive, 58-second, 72-yard drive in 5 plays to Tommy Sweeney on a 22-yard touchdown pass. Brett Rippon looked great, 17-14 after that. And then Brett Rippon throws a 9-yard touchdown pass to Colin Johnson. So again, Colin Johnson, former UT player. And after that, Brett Rippon's third touchdown pass in 3 drives, and it's 21-17. So he looked phenomenal. He really did. But we'll get to Brett Rippon in just a second. But game leaders, Davis Mills looked great. Loved what I saw from him in 2 drives, 10 for 13, 102 passing yards, 1 passing touchdown. Brett Rippon looked amazing as well. 11 for 15, 166 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns. Right now, he's the third quarterback on this roster. He did not start off in this game for them. Obviously, Caleb Williams didn't play, but Tyson Bagent did start for Chicago. With Bagent, who didn't get a lot of chances in this game, only played 1 drive through 2 for 3 to 16 passing yards. With the way that Brett Rippon looked, you could make an argument to move him up in the QB depth chart. Obviously, he's not going to be the starting quarterback. Of course, Caleb Williams is still the starter. But I think you could make an argument that Brett Rippon could be the backup quarterback for Chicago over Tyson Bagent. I mean, it's not like this is a guy that they drafted and they have high hopes in Tyson Bagent. Brett Rippon, and actually has starting experience in this league, but so does Tyson Bagent. I mean, he did start a couple games last year when Justin Fields got hurt. For a rookie, he looked solid, but he looked great in this game. And if he can keep up in the preseason, he could find himself being the backup quarterback for the Chicago Bears instead of the third quarterback on the roster who could get cut. And that would be huge for Brett Rippon. But he looked really good in this game today. And he has starting experience as well. I mean, he started one game for the Rams last year in Green Bay and threw 200 passing yards in I believe it was a snowy game in Green Bay. He looked really good in a game last year against the Green Bay Packers. Or he didn't look really good, but he looked solid for a road game where he had not had a start in a while. Looked pretty solid. I don't think they had Cooper Kupp in that game either. And then he also started like 2 games for the Broncos in 2023 or 2022. So, he has some starting experience as well. All right, rushing yards. J.J. Taylor led the Texans in rushing yards with 6 carries for 16 rushing yards, while Khalil Herbert led the Bears with rushing yards with 4 carries and 35 rushing yards. Receiving yards, Xavier Hutchinson had 5 receptions for 56 receiving yards. I did say in my Texans preview that, he's a guy that's going to have to go out there and show some good things early on in this game, and he did. He also had like 8 or 9 rushing yards, so a total of 64 rushing yards for him. But he's like 7 in the wide receiver room right now. Look at last year. The Texans had, in the 53-man roster to start off the year, they had a total of 6 wide receivers on the 53-man roster. Xavier Hutchinson was one of them. It's the same wide receiver room as last year, but this year they've added in Stephon Diggs. So you could think that one guy's, in potential danger of getting cut. If it's not Robert Woods, it probably is Xavier Hutchinson. But he looked good in this game today, so that definitely shows DeMeco Ryans and this coaching staff good signs. He went out there and did the best he could. I liked what I saw from him. Colin Johnson led the Bears in receiving yards. Another Colin Johnson mention. 3 receptions, 56 receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns. But let's go over some other stats from this game. Outside of outside of Davis Mills leading the Texans in passing yards with 102 passing yards, Case Keenum threw 7 for 9 with 78 passing yards and 1 passing touchdown. So the Texans kind of having a backup quarterback battle a little bit. Texans really haven't named a backup quarterback yet with Davis Mills and Case Keenum. Both guys, looked solid in this game. Both guys had playing time last year when C.J. Stroud was injured, but both guys went out there tonight and looked good. Combined for 180 passing yards and 2 passing touchdowns through 17 for 22. And Keenum did get sacked in this game while Davis Mills did not. But yeah. All right. Tim Boyle also threw 2 for 5 with 17 passing yards, but he only had like two drives, and he would have played the rest of this game if it wasn't for the cancellation. And that's one of those moments what I'm talking about, the game mattering to players. Tim Boyle is the 4th quarterback on the roster. With the way Case Keenum and Davis Mills looked in this game and them already having C.J. Stroud, Tim Boyle is not going to make this roster. But if he looks good in the rest of the game against the Chicago Bears and does some good things and, does that the rest of the preseason, he could get some eyes on him. Some other teams might have their eyes on him once the Texans potentially let him go. And but he didn't get that opportunity because there was another 3 minutes in the third quarter and the entire fourth quarter. So another 18 minutes of football, which would have been some time for Tim Boyle to potentially do some things. So that's one of those moments where it's like, yeah, it's tough that this game was canceled. Tim Boyle is an example. Tyson Bagent, like I mentioned, went 2 for 3 with 16 passing yards. The other quarterback another quarterback who's a fourth quarterback in the room. And this would have been his opportunity to go out there and make some noise, but didn't able to go out there and do that. Austin Reed went 2 for 2 with 10 passing yards. But yeah, let's go over the rest of the Texans rushing yards. Outside 16 rushing yards for J.J. Taylor. DeRay Ngabalawe was the starting running back for the Texans in this game. He had 3 carries for 14 rushing yards. Cam Akers had 5 carries with 13 rushing yards. Xavier Hutchinson did have 1 carry for 8 rushing yards. Texans rookie draft pick, 6th-round draft pick. Jawar Jordan had 3 carries for 5 yards. Davis Mills had 2 carries but didn't have a yard. British Brooks, undrafted rookie, not good for him. But another guy that would have gotten way more carries if he gets the time to shine later in the game. We're talking about a guy that has different numbers. 1 carry for -2 yards. He would have had a lot more yards if the game doesn't get canceled. Outside of Khalil Herbert for the Bears, Roschon Johnson had 6 carries for 24 yards. Demetric Felton had 3 carries for 14 yards. Brett Rippon had 1 carry for 9 rushing yards, so he even had 9 rushing yards as well. So in 3 drives, he had 175 total yards for 3 touchdowns. That's amazing. And wide receiver Tyler Scott had 1 carry for 4 rushing yards. All right, Texans wide receivers outside of Xavier Hutchinson, Ben Skowronek had 3 receptions for 28 receiving yards. He had an amazing reception of 27 yards. It was thrown by Davis Mills on their touchdown drive. Or actually, no, that was I think that was their field goal drive where he had that amazing catch. Rookie tight end Cade Stover, former C.J. Stroud teammate in Ohio State, had 2 receptions for 26 receiving yards. Tegan Quintoriano had 2 receptions for 21 receiving yards and 1 touchdown. So Quintoriano and Cade Stover kind of having a little bit of a tight end competition here in training camp and preseason of who's going to be that 3rd tight end. As the Texans last year only had 3 tight ends on the roster, and so looking at those 2 guys, both guys had 2 receptions. Stover had 5 more receiving yards than Tegan, but Tegan also had a touchdown. So both players played good. Honestly, Tegan getting a touchdown probably makes it a better day for him, but the rookie in his first game didn't look bad, Cade Stover. DeRay Ngabalawe also had 2 receptions for 21 receiving yards. Steven Sims had a really nice 1 reception for 20 receiving yards that was thrown by Tim Boyle. And also, what else was there? Cam Akers had 2 receptions for 18 receiving yards and 1 touchdown, so he had a 14-yard reception outside of his 4-yard touchdown. John Mechie III had 1 reception for 4 receiving yards. Troy Harrison, fullback, had 1 reception for 3 receiving yards. Johnny Johnson III had a target, and British Brooks had a target. So there were some guys that didn't get to play offensively because of the fact that this game was canceled. Bears receiving outside of Colin Johnson, Tommy Sweeney, the tight end, looked good with 3 receptions for 47 receiving yards with 1 touchdown. Brendan Bates had 2 receptions for 47 receiving yards. And Roschon Johnson had 1 reception for 7 yards. Both teams were a little bit rough with the football in the second half. Kendrick Green fumbled, but it was recovered by Case Keenum. J.J. Taylor fumbled, but it was recovered by Killian Zaire. The Bears had a couple of fumbles, one that they lost. Dante Pettis, who is Gary Pettis' son. Gary Pettis, who is the Astros third base coach, and any Astros fans watching. But Dante Pettis lost a fumble, and that was recovered by, I believe, actually, it might have been recovered by J.J. Taylor, but I think that might have been the fumble that J.J. Taylor recovered, actually. But Dante Pettis did lose a fumble, and that was the only turnover of this ball game. That was off of a punt return. So then defensively, let's go over some defensive stats. The Texans didn't have any sacks or tackles for loss, but they were led by tackles with Kalen Bullock, who looked really good in this game. He forced a fumble that was recovered by the Bears. It was Sweeney who had a reception, and Kalen Bullock hit the crap out of him, and he fumbled. But the Bears recovered their own fumble. But he looked good, led the team in tackles. Not only did he lead the team in tackles, but he also had a hard hit on a tight end in one of the first plays that was where he was on, and looked pretty good for a rookie out there. We'll go over the following players The following players had 3 tackles. Jacob Phillips had 3 tackles. D'Angelo Ross had 3 tackles. Miles Bryant, MJ Stewart, Brandon Hill, and Lonnie Johnson, who got injured in this game, had 3 tackles. But Lonnie Johnson did walk off on his own and looked fine. The following players had 2 tackles: Mike Ford Jr., Jake Hansen, McTelvin Igim, Novelli Hewitt, and Max Tooley. The following players had 1 tackle: Chris Boyd, British Brooks, Marcus Harris, Delshawn Phillips, Ali Gay, Malik Fisher, Jamal Hill, and then Khalil Davis and Troy Pride Jr. did not have any tackles. The Bears were led in tackles by Carl Jones Jr., who had 8 tackles with 1 tackle for loss. The one sack that they had was Brian Cowart, and they had a total of 6 tackles for loss. Brian Cowart had 2 of those. Let me know your thoughts on the Texans losing 17-21 to start off the preseason. Not the way you wanted to start it, with rain and game getting canceled, but there were some positives in this game. Kalen Bullock looked really good defensively and forced a fumble even though the Texans couldn't get the ball back. Davis Mills looked really good. Xavier Hutchinson looked really good offensively at the wide receiver position. And there were the 2 young tight ends, Tegan Quintariano and Cade Staver, looked pretty good. So there were some positives, but there were some negatives as well. Let me know your thoughts on the Texans losing 21-17 in the preseason opener. That's the video. Hope you guys enjoyed, and peace out. Go Texans.